So, this week's parasha, I was looking through my notes. I don't think we've had a shiur for sure the past 2 years on this week's parasha, or we discussed getting ready for Pesach. But this week's parasha has one of the worst stories that we have in Jewish history, arguably the worst story in Jewish history. The worst story in world history is the story of Adam and Chava and the sin of the golden calf, and the sin of eating from the tree, because that's what brings death into the world. The Ramban, Nachmanides, tells us that till that happened, till Adam and Chava eat from the tree, you have a Yetzer Hara, but the Yetzer Hara is external. The Yetzer Hara is the snake. Once Adam and Chava eat from the tree, it becomes internal, and we struggle with that day in, day out. But there was a time in Jewish history that Yetzer Hara once again became external. By Ma'amad Har Sinai, by the revelation at Sinai, our rabbis tell us, Paska Zuhamatam, the Zuhama, the evil inclination, the badness that is part of all of us, it went outside. It once again became external. And we were on the highest level you could possibly be. 50th level of Kiddusha, of holiness. We got the Torah. In Egypt, we're on the 49th level of Tumah. And now, every day of Sfirat HaOmer, you go up 2 levels. Because if you're on minus 49 and you get 50 levels, that just takes you to level 1. You need to go up to 50. And they went up. And we read in Parashat Mishpatim, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up 40 days and 40 nights. And the Jewish people, they're waiting to get the Torah. We go into Israel with Moshe Rabbeinu and the Torah, meaning not just the 10 commandments we got on Shavuot, but everything that Moshe learned for 40 days and 40 nights, the Luchot. We go into Israel and Shalom HaYisrael, we have Mashiach, and everything's good. But we have the sin of the golden calf. We have the sin of Chet HaEgel, and because of that Avera, once again the Yetzer Hara became internal, became part of who we are, and therefore we've been suffering since then. You want to get it even further, if Moshe doesn't break the Luchot needs its own class, but if Moshe doesn't break the Luchot, anything you ever learned, you would remember. The world would be a different world, because every single person would know all of Shas. Every single person would know all of the Halacha. Every single person would know all of Tanakh by heart. You read it once, you memorize it. When Moshe breaks the tablets, that ability disappears. But the Luchot needs its own class. The Yud Gimel Midot, we'll have to do another time in this week's parasha, deserves its own class. But I want to focus on the sin of the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. What happened? Now, there's the machloket whether or not we were ever supposed to have a Mishkan. If you go in chronological order, in the parasha Mishpatim, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up 40 days and 40 nights. The next thing the Torah should have told us about is the Chet HaEgel in this week's parasha. And yet we have the whole parasha of Terumah and Tetzaveh. Some say that we were supposed to connect to this being, this entity that is Hashem, without there being anything physical and tangible. By the sin of the golden calf, Hashem sees humans can't just connect to this theoretical entity, and they need something physical. So therefore, I'm going to give them the Aron, I'm going to give them the menorah. The rabbis all say, if Hashem doesn't command us to build kiruvim, to build these cherubs, it's avodah zarah, it's 100% idol worship. How could you be going and connecting through this being that has, whether it's the faces of angels or the faces of a man and a woman, it's avodah zarah, can't be. God commands it, so it can be. But ultimately, we needed something physical. But the question is, how could it be the Jewish people 40 days ago heard God speak? When you ask me, how do I know the Torah is authentic? My proof is the revelation at Sinai. Ma'amad Har Sinai. They hear Hashem speak, and 40 days later, a little over a month later, suddenly they're worshiping the golden calf? How could this be? How could they fall so far so fast? So I don't believe that we've discussed this in previous years. It could be we did 4 or 5 years ago, but I don't think so. I'd like to propose 3 answers. Now, every one of these answers really needs its own shiur, its own half hour to 45 minutes, but we'll do our best because we don't always get to discuss this. What happened over here? I'd like to propose 3 ideas. How could the Jewish people fall so far so fast? So, our rabbis tell us that the people see Vayara Amki Boshesh Moshe Lared Minahar. Moshe Rabbeinu says, guys, I'm going to be back in 40 days and 40 nights. And he goes up the mountain, and they put a tick on the wall, 1. And every day since then, they're putting a tick on the wall. Comes day 40, and they say, Moshe Rabbeinu is not here. Moshe Rabbeinu is not here. Answer number 1, it wasn't that they ever wanted to create an idol to worship. The idea of creating the golden calf was not, now we have a new God. That was never the idea, answer number one. Our rabbis tell us what happened. They say, Kizeh Moshe ha'ish lo yadanu mahayalo. We don't know what happened to the man Moshe. What does that mean? We don't know what happened to the man Moshe. Moshe is the greatest man who ever lived. Right? I remember my Rebbe giving a shir by Berkowitz Shlita. He said, Moshe Rabbeinu might have been gone. So go to Aharon. Doesn't get better than the next best guy is Aharon HaKohen. That's epic. That's amazing. Why didn't they just continue with Aharon? And he gave an answer. I remember there was a few times that in London over here, there were assistant rabbis in a synagogue, and the senior rabbi was leaving, and they were trying to decide who should be the new rabbi. And I told the assistant rabbi, the odds aren't in your favor. He said, why not? I said, it's a psychological thing. When the Jewish people think Moshe is gone, why didn't they just hire Aharon to be the leader? Why didn't they just appoint him? And Rabbi Berkowitz said to us, somebody else's Egel is always better than your Aharon. Right? You have somebody, they're the vice president of the company, and they need to make a new CEO. Quite often they'd rather bring in someone else because they know all his accomplishments, and the vice president, they know his faults. The assistant rabbi, they know all the problems. They somehow overlook most of the positives. They see the problems and they'll say, well, he has this, that one over there from Australia, that one over there from Israel, that one over there from America. Oh, we heard great things and we know he's done A, B, C, D. You're right. Everybody has faults. Somebody else's Egel will always be better than your Aharon. So I always tell the assistant rabbi, don't get your hopes up. They know your faults. They know your strengths, but they tend to overlook them and they focus on the faults. So just keep that in mind. But they said Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest man who ever lived. And if Moshe Rabbeinu as a man can't be the one that saves the Jewish people, he goes up and he can't come back down, then no man can. No human being can. We need to appoint something else to be our intermediary. The problem was that they felt they needed a middleman. They felt they needed an intermediary. They didn't say, I can connect directly to Hashem. When we get the Torah, Hashem says, any place you mention my name, I'm there for you. So like we said before, ideal to have a minyan, but you're at home praying by yourself, not a problem. Hashem says, you call to me, I answer you. You don't need a middleman. You don't need an intermediary. When they started Chassidut, there was a lot of mitnagdim. Many Chassidim, they said, or many people at the times, they said, we're not learning, we don't know how to read. And they started falling out of their Judaism, falling out of their Yiddishkeit, and they said, it's not for us. So, what happens is, the Baal Shem Tov comes along and starts Chassidut. He says, you don't need to know how to read. You don't even know to know words. We're going to sing. And all the songs are ayayayis, and aydirirai, and bampararam. You don't need words. My father, when my son was maybe 3-4 years old, he says, why is he singing these Ashkenaz songs? I'm like, all the Sephardi songs have like 15 stanzas and loads of words. Most Ashkenazi songs, it's either the same line over and over, tzaveh, 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 tzaveh. It's the same thing over and over and over and over, right? Moshe, emes, you need one line. It's easy to remember. Or ay, there's no words. Chassidut was specifically done like that because you don't need to know any words. You don't need to know the stanzas. Everybody can connect directly to Hashem, but the way we do it is through the Rebbe. The Rebbe gives shiraim, and many mitnagdim, many people are worried, you're creating avodah zarah. You're creating this basically idol worship. You're creating this way of doing things that everyone just relies on the Rebbe. Now, whenever, and I'm sure we've mentioned here in the past, whenever you go to Kivrei Tzadikim and Tzadikot, I always say, don't for a second think that you're praying to this dead person. I've been to Poland 20 times. You don't pray at the kever and say, please do this for me. Please help my child find the shidduch. Please help our financial. Please help this one out. You're not praying to the person. That's heresy. That's api korsut. That's why we don't know where Moshe Rabbeinu was buried. Our rabbis tell us if we knew where Moshe Rabbeinu was buried, you'd go there, you'd pray, automatically come true. There'd be no such thing as a shidduch crisis. Everybody would get married. No such thing as sick people. You go to Moshe Rabbeinu's kever and you pray and it comes true. And there's a refuah shlema. Hashem said if that's what happens, there'll be idol worship. People will treat Moshe Rabbeinu's like a god, and they'll pray to Moshe Rabbeinu instead of to Hashem. Whenever you pray, you're always saying to this person at the grave, do me a favor, you have connections, you have protexia, take my prayers and break through all the red tape and take my prayers straight to Hashem. The mitnagdim were worried that by the Hasidim, they're just going to think that the Rebbe becomes a god. They're going to think you need a middleman to connect to God. I need the Rebbe. And if the Rebbe can't do it, I can't pray. The Rebbe has to pray for me. The Rebbe has to. The mistake the Jewish people here made, by the Chet HaEgel, answer number one, the mistake they made was, we need a middleman. It wasn't that they're creating an idol in order to worship the idol. They say we need a middleman, we need an intermediary to be able to help us connect to God. Even we say every morning in the Vayosha, right before Az Yashir, Ve'aminu b'Hashem Moshe Avdo. They believed in Hashem, and the way they did it, the conduit that was Moshe. And Moshe, his servant. Now we know Moshe is legit, but now that we know that Moshe is the one to do it. And they said if Moshe can't go up and bring us down the Torah, no human being possibly can. I think there's a story we might have mentioned in the past. The point of the story is not actually what I'm trying to get to, but I think it's a beautiful story and it's worth repeating by the Shabbat table. You'll often hear me quote Reb Shimon Schwab. I'm a big fan of Reb Shimon Schwab. And if you open up Rabbi Schwab on prayer, highly recommended. Over there, his son who wrote it, he quotes the story, if I'm not mistaken. He says that I forget if it was 36 or 37, Rabbi Schwab's a young rabbi in Germany. And it's this week's parasha Ki Tisa, and he's giving over this idea. He says the mistake the Jewish people made was they thought they needed a middleman, they thought they needed an intermediary. And they didn't realize you can connect directly to Hashem. The way you say middleman in Yiddish is mitler. So Rabbi Schwab says the mistake was we don't need a mitler. Now there's a guy in the crowd over there, and what does he hear? He hears we don't need a Hitler. And he reports Rabbi Schwab to the authorities. They come down to arrest Rabbi Schwab. And arrest doesn't just mean arrest. How dare you speak against the Fuhrer? And he says, I didn't say that. He takes out the book and he says to them, here, this is my rabbi, Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, and I'm quoting. He says over here, we don't need a mitler. I wouldn't say anything against the Fuhrer. They said, we'll let you know. Which was a nice way of saying, we'll decide if we're going to kill you or not. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and after 2 weeks, Rabbi Schwab makes the phone call or gets the phone call that you're lucky, you Jewish pig, we're going to let you off. That story saved Rabbi Schwab's life because Rabbi Schwab realized these people are crazy, I need to get out of here, and he escaped to America. Rabbi Schwab's son writes in the intro to the book, he says, those 2 weeks my father never put on his pajamas. He slept in his suit with his hat right next to it, maybe even with his tie. And when I asked him, why are you wearing this? Why are you not putting on pajamas? Why are you sleeping in your clothes? He says the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, are known to come in the middle of the night with the dogs barking, grab people and hang them in the city center. I didn't think it would be kavod for a rabbi to be hung in the city center wearing his pajamas. I didn't want there to be a chilul Hashem. So I slept in my clothes. He's on death row, he doesn't know what's going to be, and he's worried about the chilul Hashem, they shouldn't be in his pajamas. But what was it Rabbi Schwab quoted from Rabbi Hirsch? The mistake the Jews made was, they said we don't need a mitler, we don't need a middleman. They said that we need a middleman, and the reality is they don't need a middleman, we don't need a middleman. Every one of us can connect directly to Hashem. Answer number 2, how could it be that the Jews fell so far so fast? Answer number 2 is very simple. They didn't really attain the high level they were on. We read it and it says, the lowest of the lowest Jewish people, the maidservant, she was able to point and say, the one doing this, that's God, that's the creator. Very high level of prophecy. They heard God speak, but it's called Matan Torah. Matan means matana, it's a gift. They didn't earn that level. And easy come, easy go. If somebody doesn't earn something, they don't value it. And it's able to disappear very quickly. You have 2 people, each one's got £1 million. One of them worked very hard, built up their business after 10 years, they got to $1 million. Another guy, he bought a scratch off, boom, won the lottery. Which one's more likely to go and have a lavish lifestyle, wasted on fancy cars and on holidays and gambling? Obviously, the guy who won the lottery. Why? Because he didn't earn it, so might as well let it ride, have some fun, enjoy. Other guy, he's going to appreciate what he has and he's going to take it seriously. The Jewish people were on a very high level. How could they fall so far so fast? So just 3 months ago, they were worshiping idols. When they get to the sea, our rabbis tell us, the sea doesn't want to split. It says, Elu of the Avodah Zarah, Elu of the Avodah Zarah. These ones worship idols, those worship idols. Why should I split? They had just been worshiping idols. The biggest deal is made Shabbat HaGadol, that they took the sheep, the idol they'd been worshipping, and they now bring it as a sacrifice. They didn't really earn that level. And if you don't work hard for something, it can go very easily. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, when he discusses this answer, he says we see the same thing by Bilam. Bilam al-Rasha, one of the Shloshes Reikarim, one of the 13 fundamental beliefs is Lo kam Yisrael ki Moshe od. Naviu mabit et tmunato. There's never been anybody like Moshe Rabbeinu. One of the Shloshes Reikarim, Moshe Rabbeinu is the Av HaNevi'im. He's the father of all prophets. Avraham Avinu, David HaMelech, Miriam, Sarai Imenu. None of them were like Moshe. Moshe speaks to God, panim el panim, face to face. Everybody else has a dream and they try and figure out what God's saying. Lo kam Yisrael. There's never been anybody amongst the Jewish people like Moshe. Say the rabbis, but there was amongst the Goyim. Who was there? Bilam. Bilam was on the same level as prophecy. He spoke to Hashem face to face. Why? How could that be? So the rabbis explained. Hashem didn't want it to be that the nations come to God and say, Hazaku Baruch, thank you very much. Of course, the Jewish people are so holy. They have a leader like Moshe Rabbeinu. If we also had a leader like Moshe Rabbeinu, we too would be great. How come we didn't get a leader, a prophet like Moshe? So God says, no problem. I gave you someone, Bilam. He's on the same level of prophecy as Moshe Rabbeinu. Explains Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. How could Bilam be such a Rasha if he was on such a high level of prophecy? Very simple. He didn't attain that level of prophecy by hard work. Easy come, easy go. The Gemara discusses this is a Rasha who used to have relations with his animal, the famous donkey that spoke. That he used to be with that donkey all the time. And all he cares about is kavod. He's a Rasha. Over and over in the story, Chabedcha says Balak, I'll give you kavod. How? Because he didn't work for it. How could the Jewish people fall so far so fast? Answer number 2, they didn't work for that level. They didn't really deserve that level. By the way, I'm sure you ladies know, the ladies weren't involved in the Chet HaEgel. The sin of the golden calf, the women weren't involved. Only the men. Aaron HaKohen is trying to stall them. The Sefer HaKuzari discusses, the Ibn Ezra also says this answer, that Aaron HaKohen specifically made the Egel to weed out the heretics. But that's not an easy answer, because it doesn't seem that way, and it's quite complicated, and how can he justify building it to be able to weed them out, and then he made everybody sin, and that caused us to not have the luchot, etc., etc. But that's what he says. Rabbi Yehuda Levi in Sefer HaKuzari, he explains that Aaron did it on purpose. But on a simple level, Aaron HaKohen, what does he do? He says, go get the gold from your wives. Go get the jewelry. Not because he thinks, the women are going to say, you ain't getting my earrings. This is my necklace. Not because of that. Because he knows that the women in Hashim Tzidkaniot, the women are righteous women. And they're going to say, no way, he's trying to stall. He knows Moshe is going to be back in 24 hours. They miscalculated. I tried to explain it to them. Chur tried to explain it to them. They killed Chur. Me, I'm happy to die for Hashem, but there's no point if they're just going to go anyway. So if I can delay them, I'll make it like I'm on their side. I'll say, yes, I'll build you a calf. No man is like Moshe. Let's build a calf. I'll delay them. Go get the gold. Go get the silver. And tomorrow we'll do it. The women are going to say no. And they did. What Aaron wasn't counting on was their eagerness. Because the Pasuk says that, and this is Rabbi Schwab's Chidush, he says the men took the gold out of their ears. You taught as a kid, he took it out of the ears of the women. They grabbed it and said, we're taking your jewelry and we're making it. Says Rabbi Schwab, no. The men were wearing jewelry. Look at the pasuk. It says, they took the golden earrings out of their ears. The next pasuk says, and they also took the earrings out of the ears of banam or benotam, their sons and their daughters. Says Rabbi Schwab, what do you mean the sons and the men were wearing earrings? He says, yeah. Why? To remind them, these ears heard Hashem speak at Har Sinai. And explains Rabbi Schwab, that's why the sin is so much worse, because not only were they not listening, they took the things that were supposed to remind them, we heard God speak and say, don't have any other gods, and still, they took those earrings, the men were wearing earrings, to adorn their ears to remind them, we heard Hashem speak. You take that to make the calf, to make the idol against God? Are you kidding me? That's what it means. Not just they sinned, says Rabbi Schwab, they sinned an epic, major sin. But okay. Aaron HaKohen is trying to stall the women. But what happened? The men, they were eager. They fell very fast because they didn't really earn that level. Answer number 2, they didn't attain that level by hard work. We need to remember that, we're going through Corona, we're going through challenges. But ultimately, this is what builds our character. This is what makes us who we are. On Monday, Be'ezat Hashem, when the kids go back to school, I heard there's a lot of partying going on. A back-to-school party for all adults. No one's going to work on Monday. Everybody's taking a day off. The kids are out of the house. Party. People are getting Deliveroo and wine and whiskey delivered to their house. It's a big party. It's been very challenging. It's been very tough. But that's what builds a person. That's what's getting us ready. Over here, the Jewish people, easy come, easy go, and therefore, they didn't take it seriously. They didn't really earn the level they belonged on, and therefore they threw it away very quickly. We have to remember that in life, for ourselves and for our families, it's the challenges, it's the struggles, it's the building that's what's going to make us who we are. And if we don't work hard and if we think we're just able to achieve something very quickly, then out the window. We have a new business academy at Chazak, e-commerce. Not our class now to discuss it, but I was discussing with the mega Amazon guy in America, and he said, if you want to order this thing, I'll get you, and now the dollar to the pound, that might be worth it for your business, and you have to figure that out. The minimum order is $50,000. And he said to me, just teach the kids. Yeah, you can make a lot of money very quickly, but it can also go very quickly. You can invest in something and it flops. You have to be aware the way things work. There's things that go out of season. Right now, Baruch Hashem, we're doing skipping rope. We're selling like 50 skippy ropes a day. But it could be that, it'll be better when the weather gets nicer, or now everyone's stuck at home. They can't go to the gym. They need skipping rope. The second the gym's open, don't expect to be making 50 pounds a day on skipping rope. Whatever it can come and go very easily. We have to work hard if we want something to have longevity. But with the few minutes I have left, I'd like to give you a third answer that right now might be the most important answer. How could it be the Jewish people fell so far so fast? Our rabbis tell us that the Satan made it appear as if Moshe Rabbeinu had died. There's a bed, and on that bed they saw the image of Moshe Rabbeinu. Any one of us were to have a parent, a grandparent, a rabbi, a rebbitzin, a mentor that was there for us and guided us, and then that person ends up passing away, chas v'shalom, what happens? You're devastated. It's depressing. It's overwhelming. And when somebody gets depressed, all logic goes out the window. They'll do the most ridiculous. You'll tell somebody, I don't understand. You're gambling away your life. I don't understand. What are you thinking? Why would you be drinking? Why would you be doing drugs? What do you don't understand this is ruining your marriage? You don't understand this is ruining your relationship? You're going to lose your job? How are you not? They just can't hear it. They can't see it. When someone's depressed, again, it's normal to be frustrated. It's normal to be overwhelmed sometimes. I had a fundraising meeting with someone, and the woman said to me, her and her husband, and said, you're doing all these new projects and you're excited and you're keen, but not everything works out. What happens when you spend so much time and effort and it doesn't work out, or the person doesn't come through what they said they would? What do you do then? I said, it's overwhelming and you probably have a bad day. You take a deep breath and you say, I get knocked down, I get up again. Life goes on. But whatever happens, you can't let yourself get depressed. Because when someone gets depressed, all logic goes out the window. I'm not sure if we discussed by Parashat Shofetim V'Shoterim, we read in the summer. And this year I think we might have actually discussed it, but it's worth repeating because it proves the point over here. You have people who go out to war. There's a story with the Chafetz Chaim. They came to him, they said, Rabbi, they want to build a Broadway theater. Should we build a Broadway theater? He says, not a good idea. But of course, they don't listen to the rabbi, and they build a Broadway theater. After opening night, they come to the Chafetz Chaim and they say, we should have listened to you. They took the mic, they made a mockery out of the Jewish people. He says, what'd they do? So they had the whole show, and then the closing scene, they took out the Bible, and they quoted, they had 100 soldiers up on stage. And the general said, who here got married in the past year? 2 guys raised their hand, he says, go home. Who here planted a vineyard in the past year? 3 guys raised their hand, go home. Who here built a new house? 2 guys raised their hand, go home. And then the general says, who here is not Yerechet? Who here doesn't have one sin? That because of that sin, they might die at war. Who doesn't have one sin? I spoke Lashon Hara, I forgot this, I said that, I looked at this. Everyone's got an Avera. Everybody starts emptying off the stage. And everyone's laughing what a stupid system the Jews have. And the only 2 guys left on stage is the old guy who sits in shul reading Tehillim all day and the Rosh Yeshiva. Chafetz Chaim says, and then what happened? Then nothing happened, Rabbi. They were making fun of us. So what was the next scene? They said there was no scene. That was the last scene. They were making fun of the crazy Jewish system of going out to war. Chafetz Chaim says, well, they left out the last scene. He said, what do you mean? He said, they left out the last scene where the rabbi and the old guy go to war and they defeat the army. They defeat their enemies. Like, what? So what do you think happened? Hanukkah. A bunch of rabbis go to war, win the war. And that's Parashat Shofetim. And then you open up the next parasha, Ki Tetzeh LaMilchama. And it says over there, someone goes out to war, V'ra'ita b'shevya eshet yifator. You see a beautiful woman, V'chashakta ba, you desire her, you're able to marry non-Jewish woman. You're able to marry this non-Jewish woman. You're able to marry her. Right? Why? There's certain rules. You got to take her home. She's got to be there for 30 days. It's not just an impulse and a desire. But says the Torah, we let you marry this non-Jewish woman because if the Torah didn't let you marry her, you would say, I don't care, I got to have her. Stop for a second and ask yourself. We just said, who goes out to war? The Rosh Yeshiva and the old guy who says Tehillim all day. So you have this holy guy who doesn't have one sin. He sees at war this non-Jewish woman. And he says, imagine, I have behind me a Chacham Ovadia, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, they're at war. They're not worried. We don't have any sins. We're tzaddikim. They go to war. They see this non-Jewish 25-year-old woman dressed very immodestly. And they say, I have to marry her because if not, if the Torah doesn't let me, I'm going to be with her anyways. Are you kidding me? Makarapo, how could that be? We just said only the biggest tzaddik goes out to war. How could it be? How could it be? So there's a few different answers, but one answer I'd like to propose is they got depressed. They're at war, and whether you like it or not, you have to kill. And that person you killed is somebody's husband, is somebody's son, is somebody's father, and it's depressing. Some of the people that you're in the same tent as might have got shot and killed. And you know that they're a father, and they're a child, and they're a husband. And you have to go back and you have to deal with that. They don't talk about it, but there's certain platoons in the army, the suicide rate is 20-30%. It's very depressing. It can be very overwhelming. This rabbi might be a rabbi with not even one sin, but in that environment, if you get depressed, all logic goes out the window and you'll do the most terrible sins. Over here by the Chet HaEgel, the reality is, it was depressing. They thought Moshe was gone. And even though they just heard Hashem speak 40 days ago, they couldn't even begin to imagine what that was, because I'm at a loss. We lost Moshe Rabbeinu, is what they thought. And therefore, they just became so consumed by depression, all logic went out the window, and they'll build the golden calf. I was giving a class to Hasmonean girls. I said, right now, you have no idea who's really suffering. You have no idea, because everybody's sort of stuck at home and here and there, and they're zooming into class and whatever it might be. I said, but look out next week when you're back in school. And it's imperative for moms and grandmothers also, pay attention. Because kids are supposed to be going back to normal. Is it really going to be normal? Or there'll be certain kids who suddenly don't want to go and do things they always did. And suddenly they're wearing long sleeves when they used to wear shorter sleeves, because who knows if there's self-harm. Right? Whenever we go on trips with all the students, one of the first things I look out for when we have meals, who's not eating? Who's not? And I'll always, unfortunately, there's always a few. And I'll go over to the teachers. You got to check her out. You got to check him out. He's not eating. He says he's a vegetarian. Brought him vegetarian food. He says he's not so hungry, but it's been 3 days already. I think there's an issue over there. You have to be aware, because depression, chas v'shalom, can lead people to do the stupidest, craziest, most ridiculous things. The Jewish people, they think Moshe is gone, they got depressed. They'll build the golden calf, even though they just heard that they have manna coming from heaven. You know God's there. Doesn't matter. I'm not thinking. We have to be so careful for ourselves also. I know some people, it's very overwhelming. Reach out, get help, speak to someone. People are there. If you be aware for your friends, for your family members, who suddenly now, when things are back to normal, not able to get back to normal, they don't want to come out, and they're not being themselves. Make sure there can't be depression. Frustration, normal. Sometimes people are overwhelmed, have a bad day, maybe even a bad week. But if you see them and it can, when you build yourself up, it takes a long time. Going down, it's very easy to collapse a house. It's very easy to go down a slide. Not so easy to get up. We have to be careful, because when someone's in a downward spiral, it can go down very quickly. So just to recap, 3 answers. How could the Jews sin and fall so far so fast? Answer number 1, they thought they needed a middleman. Every one of us needs to realize we can connect directly to Hashem. Answer number 2, they didn't really achieve and earn the level they were at, and therefore, easy come, easy go. And answer number 3, they got depressed. And when someone gets depressed, they'll do the stupidest, most ridiculous things, all logic goes out the window. If do it Hashem b'simcha, we need to remember we always serve Hashem with happiness, and there's no such thing. Depression is not an option. If someone's having a tough time, go seek help, go find them. If you know someone, be there for them, push them to see help, because if someone gets truly depressed, they can do the most terrible, crazy things that we never would have dreamed of. We have to make sure it doesn't happen. It's not an option. Frustration, okay. Overwhelmed, sometimes. Be there for each other. Women are much better at this than men. Men aren't happy to reach out. Men aren't happy to open up. Be there, push if you need to, because there can't be depression. And there are a lot of people right now that they're stuck at home, and they've been home, and they don't know, and they're scared, even with the vaccine. They don't know. Don't let them get to be depressed. Be there for them. And Be'ezrat Hashem, if we're able to do that, then we will be able to get back to that level of not having the Yetzer Hara internal, not having Yetzer Hara being there like it should have been with Moshe Rabbeinu and Mashiach. Amen v'amen.